True creepy, scary and horrific story about the nun, YouTube, English. Thank you so much for your kind words. We are thrilled to have viewers like you who appreciate our content. Your support means the world to us. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel to stay updated with our latest videos. We can't wait to continue sharing amazing content with you, and having you as a part of our community makes it even more special. Thanks again for being awesome. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Let's move on to the story. Thanks for listening. I grew up in a deeply religious family, where the church held immense importance. My parents made sure I followed in their footsteps, so it was almost predestined that I would become a nun when the opportunity arose. Although I was still quite young, I was essentially an apprentice, preparing myself for a life of devotion. My spiritual guidance came from an older nun and priest within the church who served as my mentors. However, the nun I looked up to was far from the kind, serene figure one might expect in a convent. She was cruel, with a short temper that she often took out on me, the youngest among us. I became her unwitting servant, performing all the chores that the other nuns loathed. Cooking, cleaning, laundry, I was responsible for it all. My days were endless, resembling double shifts, leaving me feeling more like a janitor than a nun. There was no time for prayer or spiritual study with the others. I was left to my chores and subjected to the older nuns' constant berating. No matter how diligently I worked, she always found something to criticize. The floors weren't scrubbed enough, or the bed sheets were too wrinkled. It was a never-ending ordeal, but I had no choice but to endure it. Leaving the convent wasn't an option. My family would never understand, and I felt trapped. Every night, as I was finally allowed to rest, I would cry myself to sleep, regretting the day I had chosen this path. But I saw no way out. This oppressive routine continued for what felt like an eternity. I knew it was unfair treatment, so one day, I mustered the courage to confront the priest privately. I poured out my grievances, explaining how I was being mistreated. To my dismay, he brushed aside my concerns, reprimanding me and insisting that I obey without question. It was as if I had defied God himself. I spiraled into depression, unable to see any glimmer of hope. I mechanically carried out my chores, barely functioning, and continued to cry myself to sleep each night. Then, one fateful day, I overheard the nun and priest discussing me in another room. What was even more disturbing was the laughter that accompanied their conversation. It was as though they had been using and manipulating me, finding joy in my suffering behind my back. I couldn't bear it any longer. I confronted them, barging into the room, only to find them speaking casually, as if nothing had happened. I stood there awkwardly as they stared back at me. I stammered, apologizing for what I thought I had heard. Suddenly, the nun charged at me, yelling wildly, demanding that I leave and get back to work, calling me scum. She tried to grab me, but I screamed and broke free, terrified of what she might do. I fled as fast as my legs could carry me, returning to my chores. But things remained the same for the next few days. Then, one ominous night, as I was mopping the convent's floor, I heard eerie sounds echoing through the halls. It was a time when the place was usually shrouded in silence. These sounds were emanating from the same room where I had overheard the nun and priest before. Fear gripped me, but an irresistible urge pushed me to investigate. I moved cautiously, trying not to make a sound. Finally reaching the room's door, I strained to listen, struggling to discern what was happening. To my horror, I heard what sounded like an intimate encounter. I couldn't believe my ears. They were a nun and a priest. It was both illegal and blasphemous. I screamed in shock, but the pair noticed my presence and charged at me. Their eyes were wild, and I screamed again, terrified of their intentions. The priest produced a roll of duct tape and silenced me, rendering me helpless. They bound my arms and legs together, rendering me completely defenseless. They hoisted me up and carried me outside, heading towards the well. I was sobbing, trying to plead through the tape, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. When we reached the well, they dropped me in, leaving me bruised, bound, and gagged at the bottom. I stared up at them, tears streaming down my face, as they laughed and taunted me with demonic glee. In that moment, I knew it was the end. There would be no rescue. I was left in the darkness, surrounded by water and rats, my cries muffled. With no hope of escape, I wept softly, resigned to my cruel fate. The story concludes with the chilling revelation that the young nun's body was discovered decomposing in a well on March 27, 1992. The case involved numerous twists, allegations of evidence tampering, and witnesses turning hostile. Ultimately, a nun and a priest, Sister Safi and Father Thomas Coulter, were convicted of her demise, along with the destruction of evidence. It was alleged that their heinous acts stemmed from Sister Obayo's discovery of their illicit relationship, leading to her tragic end. What kind of storm rages through at 1 in the morning? A sense of disquiet weighed heavily on me. I couldn't believe I had only slept for 2 hours. Perhaps the clock was broken. I half expected Mother Mary to wake me if I overslept, but there was no one else around, just the echoing silence of the church. I heard the phone ringing, piercing through the stillness of the night. Who could be calling at this hour? It was utterly infuriating. I picked up the receiver with a sense of annoyance. "Hello," I muttered, half awake, half irritated. The voice on the other end was barely discernible, like a whisper from the shadows. It sounded eerie, as if the caller was playing some sick prank. "What are you saying? Is this some kind of twisted joke?" I snapped back, my patience wearing thin. "You're disturbing a priest. You know, if you did this to Mother Mary, she'd get you with the ruler so hard you'd have square marks on your backside. Stop it. Don't call this number again." I slammed the phone down, my heart racing. Those orphans must be up to something. Boredom and sleeplessness were a dangerous combination. I'd better go down and see which one of them was misusing the phone. But as I descended the stairs, the storm outside intensified. Thunder rumbled, and lightning slashed across the sky. The power had gone out, plunging the church into darkness. At least now, those restless kids couldn't cause any more trouble. I ventured into the congregation area, feeling my way through the inky blackness. Suddenly, I heard strange noises, unsettling in the midst of the usually dead silence. The sounds seemed to emanate from the same room where Sister Obayo had met her tragic end. Fear gripped my heart, but curiosity overcame my apprehension. I had to know what was happening. I tiptoed closer to the room, trying to make as little noise as possible. My heart pounded in my chest as I pressed my ear against the door. straining to hear. What I heard sent a shiver down my spine. It was like they were getting intimate on the other side. I was consumed by an irresistible urge to see for myself. I slowly turned the doorknob and peered inside. To my shock and dismay, I witnessed the unthinkable. The nun and the priest were entwined in a passionate embrace. I screamed, unable to comprehend the sheer audacity of their actions. They were a nun and a priest. It was illegal and against every tenet of righteousness. My screams seemed to snap them out of their illicit moment. Panic seized them, and they charged toward me, their eyes wild and unhinged. "Get out of here! You have no right to be here! Get back to work, you scum!" the nun shrieked, lunging toward me. I screamed and broke free, my heart racing with terror. I had no idea what they might do to me. I fled as fast as my trembling legs could carry me, racing through the darkened halls of the church. Back in the safety of my quarters, I tried to make sense of the night's horrors. What had I stumbled upon? What sinister secrets lay hidden within the walls of the church? The storm outside raged on, mirroring the turmoil within my soul. I knew one thing for certain. I was now entangled in a nightmare from which there might be no escape. The story continued to unravel as a series of unsettling events plagued the life of a priest, trapped within the confines of a mysterious and sinister church. It was inspired by real-life incidents and tales of darkness that had transpired within the walls of such religious sanctuaries, where the boundaries between good and evil blurred into a chilling nightmare. As the days passed, I found myself trapped in a twisted reality within the church's oppressive walls. The storm outside seemed to mirror the tempest of fear and uncertainty that raged within me. Every moment felt like a descent into an abyss of darkness. The following night, I was assigned the task of tending to the candles in the dimly lit chapel. The flickering flames cast eerie, dancing shadows on the cold stone walls. The memories of that horrifying encounter with the nun and priest haunted my thoughts. I knew I couldn't confide in anyone within these walls. The very walls that were meant to provide sanctuary seemed to conceal unspeakable horrors. My uncle, the priest who should have been my protector, was complicit in this web of malevolence. As I carefully approached the altar, a voice echoed in my mind, urging me to uncover the truth, to unveil the secrets hidden within this forsaken church. My fear and curiosity warred within me. I decided to take a chance, to investigate what lay beyond the facade of devotion. Under the cover of darkness, I ventured to the room where I had witnessed the nun and priest. It felt as if unseen hands guided me through the labyrinthine corridors, as if I were being drawn toward an unspeakable revelation. I pushed open the creaking door and entered the room. It was bathed in a pale, ghostly light that emanated from an old, ornate mirror mounted on the wall. The room was filled with an oppressive silence, as if it were holding its breath. My eyes were drawn to the mirror, its surface tarnished with age. As I gazed into it, I felt a strange sensation, as if I were being pulled into its depths. The reflection that stared back at me seemed distorted, as if it were a reflection of my own inner turmoil. Suddenly, the room seemed to come alive with eerie whispers, voices from the past, murmuring secrets long buried. It was as if the very walls of the church were revealing their dark history to me. I watched in terror as images flickered in the mirror's glass, scenes from the past, scenes of unspeakable horror, I saw the nun and the priest engaged in unholy acts, their faces twisted with madness and desire. I saw others, too, faces of lost souls who had suffered within these walls. The room seemed to close in around me, and I stumbled backward, my heart pounding. It was as if the very air had become heavy with the weight of malevolence. I knew I had stumbled upon something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. As I left the room, the whispers of the past followed me, haunting my every step. I had glimpsed the darkness that lurked within the heart of the church, and I knew that I could no longer ignore the truth. But with each passing day, the walls of the church seemed to close in, and the malevolent forces that dwelt within grew stronger. I was trapped in a nightmare from which there might be no escape, and I feared that the truth would come at a terrible price. The story continued to weave a web of mystery and horror, as the priest found himself ensnared in a sinister conspiracy within the church's walls. The mirror's revelations hinted at a dark history, and the priest was faced with an agonizing choice: to confront the malevolence that lurked within, or to be consumed by it.